Welcome back to Game Set and Chat. Today our guest is Jamie Edwards, sports psychologist and the person leading the transformation of Manchester Giants. Welcome, Jamie, and thank you very much for giving up your time today. For the audience or the people who are watching this might not know who you are, so if you could give some background on your journey, what you do, where you've come from, that would be amazing.
Okay, so I've come from town to start off with, so this has been very handy. My journey is I'm a former basketball player in another life. Played at Manchester United, but from north of Manchester, Oldham Saddleworth Way, and played in. Used to catch 3 buses down to Stretford when Manchester United used to have a basketball team. Not many people will know that, but that was the case, and I came through that program, which was an elite program at the time, and I met my mentor, who was a guy called Alton Bird, and Alton was arguably the best American to come to this country. And I used to catch 3 buses in the 6 weeks holidays and sit by the side of the court and watch the first team train every day. And the assistant coach introduced me to him. I used to have a poster of him on my bedroom wall. So when he came to Manchester, I was like, oh my God, this is fantastic. And he took me under his wing. And, I was very blessed. That could have been any kid. I just took the opportunity, but that could have been any kid who he took under his wing. But he took me under his wing, and he played the same position as me. He was short. I was 6'5" in another life. I've shrunk for every year I've retired. And he actually introduced me to mental skills. So he had a huge influence, not just on my basketball, but more so on my life. And it was that, he said the difference between you, Jamie, and the next player. Actually, he didn't say player, said person. The difference between you and the next person isn't talent, isn't ability, it's how you think. And so as a 15-year-old, when that gets imprinted on your head, then, that stays with you. That stayed with me for life. So I was fortunate. I've kind of modeled everything that he did, actually. I'm jumping ahead here, but, he had basketball camps. I had a basketball camp. I used to run big basketball camps. He had his own shoe deal.
Right.
I remember because he lived in Gatley, actually.
Right.
And I remember driving into his. He had a black BMW E-Reg.
Right.
I don't know if you know. Do you
remember
E-Reg?
Yeah.
So E-Reg is like, there'll be a lot of people watching that. What's an E-Reg? Like this. So he had this E-Reg BMW, and we drove into his garage, and along each wall, along the 3 walls of his garage, he had his Adidas shoes out of the boxes, like lined up. I remember going in and going, one day I'm gonna have my own shoe deal. And it's I'm laughing about it now, but it was like those key moments that when you say I'm gonna do something, or somebody's put you in an environment, and so. I remember saying, one day I'm going to have my own shoe deal, and I was one of like 3 players in the country that had their own shoe deal down the road. But it was that moment.
Yeah.
So he was very influential. I ended up going to the high school that he went to in San Francisco, and
wow.
And I played high school basketball, and so I was a basketballer. And then came back and played here, England international, 7 senior caps. I guess proud moment was being in the same England team as him, because he naturalised.
Right.
So I was in with my mentor in the same squad, and I had a very successful career, but short. Through injury, and my attentions then went to developing people. And
right. So was it always basketball? Was there any other? Was it always basketball that you wanted to do? There was nothing else.
Well, if you were to go in Saddleworth now and ask if I walked down the street, somebody would shout across, "Hi, Pele," because my nickname since the age of 6 was Pele.
Right.
Because I was a footballer.
Okay.
And I was a very skillful footballer. But 50-50 ball, like it's yours. I'm not going in for a 50-50 ball. You know, in Saddleworth, the rain comes in sideways, so it was too cold.
Yeah.
And so, you know, so that wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And when I started playing basketball, and it was, again, a teacher who, in the second year, which you know is year 8, I played in year 8. And then in year 9, I didn't want to play because I didn't like the teacher.
Yeah.
And he put me on the team, and like the rest is history. But what was interesting is that, again, it's the influences of certain people and how they direct you. So I was a footballer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a footballer, and I was a skillful footballer. But what was, and I was telling this story the other day. So being from Manchester, Miles Plattin, Collyhurst, that's where I lived originally. Yeah. And I always said at the time, my uncle said, "There's always someone better than you," and I was like, "No," because I was, you know, I played town team.
Yeah.
You know, at primary school. So I was handy. I just wasn't tough, and I was like, "No, there's nobody better than me." And then this kid, he was called Patrick Coward, came to the school, and he wasn't just skillful like me, but it was like he was in year 9. You know, his legs were like this, you know, and, you know, my legs were like stick thin. And so he was, you know, he was significantly better than me, you know, and I was good.
Yeah.
But he was physical as well. And so when I started playing basketball, I always had this imaginary kid in Italy who, you know, I just was very humble.
Yeah.
You know, I just had this kid in Italy who was always practicing. When I stopped, I always saw this kid just shooting 10 more free throws. And so I football, but I couldn't influence the game in football like you can in basketball.
Yeah.
You know, because you had the ball more and it was up and down more. So that was really... I also played squash.
Right, okay.
So I nearly gave basketball up to play squash.
Right.
I had an uncle who played, who was a very good squash player, and I just loved, you know, I love squash. I could look at a squash court now and get injured, you know, but you know that it's too much for me. But what's interesting, and we talk about, you know, football and what I took from football, which was there's always somebody better than you.
Yeah.
From squash, you know, I remember watching this pro. I was 13 at the time, and I'm watching this pro called Arthur Jacobson, and he was playing without a racket and without a ball. So he's like hitting shots like this, going round the court, like playing a real game on his own.
Yeah.
You know, literally throwing the ball up and you know and literally hitting shots. So he came off the court, and I asked him, I said, "Can I ask you what you're doing?" Now, here's the lesson. Like, I'm always asking. I'm interested.
Yeah.
Even at 13, I wanted to know.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask people, you know, I got taught that early on, you know, in life. And that's what, you know, when you think of my performance coaching, that's what I encourage players and kids to do. So let me tell you about Arthur very, very quickly. So he said, "I'm ghosting." And I said, "Ghosting, what's that?" And he said, "Well, if I can't do it with a racket, if I can't do it without a racket and without a ball, I can't do it with a racket and with a ball." So then I took that concept of ghosting and incorporated it into basketball. So I used to ghost, you know, as a player, as I, you know, became a very good player.
Yeah.
Still, you know, like I could bounce a ball. When I teach the kids, I go, that is the exact size of a ball. You know, because, you know, you have to be able to run around and catch and throw. You know, so there were lots of bits that I learned from different sports and then applied it to basketball. I know that was a long answer.
No, it's great. I think sort of what I was getting from that is obviously there's been parts of your life, or there's been sort of real key elements which has led to this idea of it's much more than just the physical element of a sport. It's the sort of the mind, it plays a massive part. So at what point did you think, actually, everything that I've learned over the past or my career since I was a young boy, did you think that you were going to give that to somebody else? So the idea of the brain management that you do, at what point did you think, actually, I need to relay this information to someone?
I was doing that from when I was, so I'm a point guard, I'm still a point guard at heart.
Yeah.
Point guard is, not the NBA type point guards today. They come down, shoot the ball from miles out behind the 3-point line. The point guard was the guy, like in netball, the center, or, the number 10 or the midfielder. So you're the creator.
Yeah.
And so that was me. I was like a pass first pointer. So I always had that mentality of how can I help? How can I help somebody be better? And, they're not young anymore, but, I've got a guy who he started his company because of the mindset that we had when I was teaching him basketball as a kid. So I was doing this, I just had a ball, and then and that was through camps and clinics. And then we took the ball away, which was, 20 odd years ago. And, I started training brains just, without the ball.
Yeah. And I know a bit about you, Jamie, but you must have had some real success stories through the people that you work with. That there must have been some real points where you thought, actually, that what you've done or what you've said or the advice that you've given has had a big impact on certain sports people. I don't know whether you could mention certain individuals. I'm not sort of primed to do that, but you must have some element of success stories or things that you're really proud of through your experiences.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with some very world-class and very famous individuals, ranging from, I coached Gareth Bale. I've worked with Freddie Flintoff. I coached Freddie through the Ashes that made him famous. So I usually get a call when this is happening.
Yeah.
When this is happening, or they're at the top and they want to go to a different level. Joe Hart. I remember actually I wasn't far away from here going along the M60, and got a call from Joe, and he said, I'm about to be dropped by England. I've just been dropped by Man City. I don't know what to do. And I said, do you know how to play in goal? And the phone went silent. Like, is this guy really asking me, do I know how to play in goal? I said, do you know how to play in goal? He's like, yeah. I said, are you training hard every day? He said, yeah. I said, well, you already know what to do. So the situation's not asking you what do you need to do. It's asking you who do you need to be. So if you think about what I just said there, do or be, a footballer, somebody in management, or, you're training them to do a job.
Yeah.
But you're not training them who they need to be. And so it was, who do you need to be to get back in the team? Who do you need to be to go to another level? And that's what we had to.
Right.
That's what we work on. It's everybody's trained to do a job. So, I apologize sometimes and say, I'm not telling you this to impress you of who I've worked with, but it's just the reality of some really, really top.
Yeah, absolutely.
And many people ask, why do they need to work on, the mind? Aren't they already mentally tough? But it's not. It's very often somebody's coming to me because of their sport, but actually we end up working on other aspects. So, a young Luke Shaw who comes to me when he's in his first year at Man United, of course he can play left back. Of course he can do left back. But who does he need to be a Manchester United player is completely different. Who do you need to be to relate to your boss or even your teammates or even your wife or significant other or boyfriend, husband? And, so that's not, can you do the job? Of course you can play. Of course you can run your department. So the challenges for, yes, I work with some, elite sportsmen, Wimbledon Tennis Club, some of the best golfers in the world. Why do I do that? Because ultimately my passion is I take the very best from them and I can give it in different ways to lots of young people, because really they should have it before they even get to that level.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, they should have it. Like if you're teaching a kid how to read and write, then you should be teaching them how to train the brain.
Yeah.
Not just for sports, but for life as well. And so I say that all the time. I've got a golfer at the minute who, he can play golf, but he's got stuff that's happened, and I call it insurance. you don't get car insurance after you've had a crash.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get it before the crash, and sometimes you get it like you don't even use it. It's just there, and that's what having a trained brain is about.
Yeah, really, really interesting. I'm sure if we could spend all day talking about this, but I want to delve into your other side as well. So you've recently acquired Manchester Giants.
Mm-hmm.
How's that going?
That should be those posts that people have. This is then, this is now. Yeah, how's it going? No, I say that I say in jest. It's going very well.
Good.
Yeah, depends what hour of the day you ask me.
Yeah.
It's going very well. I tried to acquire the club 23 years ago, which is which was part of the transition of me going from basketball to to training brains.
Yeah.
And there's a little caveat around that as well, that the lawyer that I had 20 odd years ago, he said to me, he was going to introduce me to someone. He said, "You do play golf, don't you? Because I'm going to introduce you to someone, we'll go and play golf." And I went, "No." He said, "Well, you can't come then." So I vowed never to turn down a corporate golf invitation again. Right. So I went to learn how to play golf. And within 12 months, I was like playing off 9. Because he wanted to help me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I always tell young kids and even a lot of women, learn how to play golf. You get 30 minutes in an office with somebody. You get 4 hours on a golf course with somebody. And if it wasn't for that, then that led to me, because I went to learn how to play golf, then, started working with golfers and the PGA on training brains. And that kind of led, that kind of led that way. So so one of the main reasons why I've had this career with all these top guys is because that lawyer, and it was because we were working on the Manchester Giants back in the day.
I'm obviously very biased towards sport, but I sometimes I just actually having a formal interview with someone, or when we're appointing, is you sort of see the best of them. But actually, a round of golf, like you said, is 4 hours. You really get to know that sort of person. I think that's be a really powerful way to interview someone, and that ability to play sport opens a door that potentially hadn't been accessed before. Yeah. So I do think it's really powerful.
But I'll give you a quick example. So my son came into Manchester, into the office to see me, and he said, I said, "Let me introduce you to someone." So I took him into one of the offices, and the first thing they asked him, wealth management guys, first thing they asked him was, "Do you play golf?" Without me even, because they wanted to take him out.
It is interesting. So is it hard?
So you go, how's it going with the Giants?
Harder than you thought?
No, not at all. Not harder than I thought, because I knew it was going to be challenging, difficult, relentless. So not harder than I thought. The club for 10 years has been at the bottom of the league, and it needed a shift in culture, needed energy, needed different standards, mindset, everything. And so that's what we've done. We're dragging it. And so in 2 years, we've gone from the bottom of the league. We're currently sat second in the league, which, that's an achievement in itself.
Absolutely.
We've been to a cup final. We've rebranded, which,
Can you explain the rebranding? Can you explain what the new badge is? That's why I said, because it's
the rebrand. I think if you're going to take anything from this, or as a parent, and definitely as a young person, like all these touch points that I'm talking about have all involved people.
Yeah,
they've involved
clear.
people. Yep. So this rebrand. Some of the people close to me are saying, "Jamie, you've got to rebrand." I was like, "We haven't got time. It's like, it's April. Mm-hmm. We've not got time." And so I asked a friend, very good friend of mine from my school days, I asked him, "Who do you know in Manchester?" Again, it's all people. Yeah, relationships. And if there's anything young people today, really, I don't think that they have that emphasis, because they're all like this. This is their relationships. But my emphasis is, it's not going to be your best friend who's going to open a door for you. It's going to be somebody, I call it networking up. It's going to be somebody older than you. So he introduced me to a guy, Chris Garrett. He's done a lot of great work in Manchester. So we're on this Zoom call in the lockdown, and he said, I used to be a Giants fan. I was like, okay, tick. That was a start. He said, I used to be a Giants fan, and I said, great. And I had a T-shirt on which said 2H2G, which was an old brand, a retro brand from the 90s. It stands for Too Hard to Guard. Now, you would never know what that meant because it was just 4 letters. And he looked up and he threw the screen and he said, and that means Too Hard to Guard. And I said, how do you know that? He said, because I used to come to your basketball camps when I was a kid. And I was like, you've got the job. Right? I didn't need to know anymore. So I said to him, look, here's the brief. 2 things only. I said, it's got to be world class and it's got to be cool as. Yeah. That's what it is. That's the brief. And I don't want a basketball in there, because if you're not in basketball, you're not going to go out.
Yeah, understand.
And if you go to New York, you come back with a New York Yankees cap. It just says NY. You go to LA, you come out with an LA cap. And same with Paris. You go to Paris Saint-Germain. So that was very important, because this is a world-class city.
Yeah.
World-class city, 2 world-class football institutions. And the basketball needed to fit somewhere in the middle of that. So I say lots of red, lots of blue, and plenty of room for green. So we evolved this brand identity, which, wasn't just, MG, but the Roman numeral 10 is really for the 10 boroughs.
Yeah.
So, Manchester's made up of 10 boroughs, and, for me, it was 10 players. Each player is an ambassador to a borough. So we're going out, and the community aspect was very important, to revisit that. I used to say 20 odd years ago, nobody's David Beckham, so they're not going to come to us. Nobody's Marcus Rashford today, or Kevin De Bruyne, where they're just going to flock to us. So we have to have an outreach program that, I believe, in a way that's not been done and is done across the boroughs. So that is a symbol of that. It's also from my trained brain days of its multiplication.
Okay.
So you don't just do something once. You don't just play well once. You play well over and over and over again. You don't just run back on defense once. You've got to be consistent. It's multiple times. You don't just give great customer service once. It's multiple times.
Right.
And so it's also a reminder. The guys, I reminded them not so long ago. I said, remember this. It's, don't just play once. Yeah. So it's over and over.
So it's completely fascinating. And I said this earlier, but I could listen to you all day. And I'm not just saying that, but I'm very conscious that we haven't got long with this episode. So we always round off the episode with just one question. And it would be, if you could give your younger self one bit of advice, what would that be?
It's a great question. What would that advice be to my younger self?
Yeah.
I'm thinking I've done some of it, but I'll give you a couple of them, because I think my younger self, I would say, because I'm very fortunate and blessed that a lot of parents, entrust me with their kids, just like, if somebody's interested, if I'm giving my son to somebody to work with or develop, it's a huge responsibility.
Absolutely, yeah.
As a teacher, it's a huge responsibility. So I guess I'm living that.
Yeah.
All the time through, I get to pass on. If I've learned over 20 years of working with elite athletes, I get to pass on, whether it's an 11-year-old skier that I've worked with, and 6-year-old kids at Wimbledon. So I'm always passing on, what would that be? But if I was going back to my younger self, I would say, be like, I wasn't great in school. I wasn't great in school. Some people say, well, how have you, done what you've done? I would say, get your maths, English, sciences knocked out, but don't rely on them as like this piece of paper.
Yeah.
The piece of paper gets you to the door.
Yeah.
If you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, whatever, you got to have the piece of paper.
Yeah.
But if if you're going to stand out in some kind of way, there's a certain set of skills and qualities that you've got to have today that are not to do with the piece of paper.
I laugh and I smile because that you've hit the nail on our head with our ethos, and our sponsor Andrew Law is really passionate about that. Lynn McGrath, our CEO, you're sort of saying exactly the same words that they would say, that gets you to interview, but what gets you the job, and that sits perfectly to what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and that's why it's and I'm thinking, what would I say to my younger self? But that is, that's what I would say, and I think let me say it a different way. What would I say to the kids today? Yeah. Give people your best 5 minutes. Give people your best 5 minutes. No agenda. Ask a lot of questions. Yeah. My son took this to the nth degree. He's in class, and he's, I'd get reports back from the teachers. Colby's always asking questions, and he needs to. And he said, "Dad, you told me to ask a lot of questions."
Yeah.
And I said, "Son, at the right time."
Yeah.
Not disturbing everybody in class. Ask a lot of questions and get it's people and relationships, and you have to develop that now. And unfortunately, parents tell us as youngsters, and there'll be a lot of parents out there who will have said this: don't talk to strangers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you say that to your son or daughter, and they are going to remember that unconsciously in the back of their mind. They're going to be in an interview.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a stranger.
Yeah.
And they're going to remember, don't talk to strangers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is interesting, yeah.
And so, so I would say access people and relationships. If you want to be a scientist or a lawyer, you've got to have good skills. So you've got to nail those skills down, but complement them with a different set of skills as well.
Yeah. Really interesting. Jamie, thank you very much for your time today.
No, I'm sorry, it's gone so quick.
No, don't be. Thank you so much.
Yeah.